Hi everyone, welcome to Sales in Minutes. I'm Astrid, and in this show we invite sales professionals to share their best hands-on tips and step-by-step strategies on everyday sales challenges. Each episode is about 10 to 15 minutes and are packed with ideas that you can start using right away. So we're back again with Monty Robins, Commercial Account Manager at G2. If you haven't listened to the earlier episodes yet, Monty has shared some great insights on learning to fail in sales and selling to highly educated buyers. He's working on sales for 7 years now and have a lot of great experience to share with us today. And in this episode, we're switching gears to talk about using customer proof strategically. So Monty, tell us, how can sales rep use customer proof strategically throughout the sales process today?
Yeah, this topic close to my heart at G2. Obviously, we're a house of social proof, but I think it's something that you can incorporate throughout the sales process, right? We look at sales from initial outreach all the way to the point of close, and throughout that journey, there are various different places where we can be leveraging social proof, because we know that 85% of buyers, they want to see the experience of others before they make a decision. So why don't we push that proactively? A lot of the time, customers will be doing that research themselves. We see that a huge amount of people come on G2. We get, 3 to 5 million people on there every month reading reviews. And when I go to trade shows and I talk to companies, lots of those sellers actively push their buyers to G2 if they have good reviews. But we don't necessarily think about how can we use that throughout our sales process, rather than a lot of the time it comes in a little bit late when buyers need some reassurance around like this product is actually really going to work. So happy to dive in and talk through some of those like specific areas throughout that process. That's probably the best, and perhaps we start at the beginning.
Yeah, and how do you think like social proof can spark some interest during the prospection?
Yeah, I think when we think about this, a lot of buyers look to see what we'd call like show me, you know me. So we just, in the last episode, we talked a bit about the purple cow theory and how standing out is really important. And I don't think many sellers are utilizing their reviews. So if you're a seller and you're not familiar with every case study you have as a business, that I would say, depends on how many case studies you have, but for your segment, your vertical, or whatever region you sell on, you should know all of those, because you can then reel off those stats. So I know, for example, impact.com, they cut their CPL in half with G2 Zoom Info, reduce their cost of acquisition by 33%. Those are stats that I can share on a call anecdotally to then drop into a case study. But when we start thinking about how do we use this for outreach, that's where, if you've got a case study from a direct competitor to your prospect, that should be one of your number one things you're sending out. If you've got reviews from people within that vertical, that's a really nice way to put something in there that shows you know a little bit more about them and helps them feel confident you fixed this problem for someone like them before. So when we're thinking about our outreach, it's how do I make sure that our buyer, if I see something about them out there in the world, I want to prove to them, like if they're talking, maybe they did a post on LinkedIn about their contract lifecycle management tool sucking. And I go, actually, okay, cool.
I'll be there directly.
Exactly. Or they're like, does anyone know any? They do a post on LinkedIn, like it's the perfect situation.
Yeah,
But
I'll be there.
if we see someone talking about those things or there's some engagement, that's when, if we've got a review that shows someone switching from PandaDoc to Oneflow and they talk about how much better that is, then that could be a really nice one to drop in there if we know, and if we have buyer intent and we see someone looking at a competitor or one of those things, then that can be an area where we can use social proof just to stand out a little bit and be like, okay, actually, if this person's in market and they're thinking about it, I want to show that we help with that problem, because it might just catch their attention. And that's where I think a review snippet in an email, or if you have like a LinkedIn post that highlights where you've done a case study that the company puts out, tag your prospect into that, use it to just kind of demonstrate your business's ability to fix problems. And then I think that, in my experience and with our customers' experience, that works really well. Companies with good, strong social proof, they leverage it and they push it, and it helps.
Yeah, so use like snippets and badges to open that door.
100%.
Yeah, and like, how do you match proof to the buyer's previous experience or frustrations that they had?
Yeah. Now this is an interesting one because we've got to have done a fair bit of discovery to get to the point where we understand what a problem someone might be facing is. And this comes back to, I mean, there are tools that would help you if you have a lot of case studies, depending on what your company has. But this is where if someone is telling me they're really struggling to collect reviews and they sit within the education sector, so they have like an education software tool. I know that we have I think it's Mo Engage, but I know like the case studies and being able to be like, actually completely hear your problem. This is how we fixed it for another customer. And using that case study as your example to tell the story is a really powerful way for us to be able to start being like, this worked for them. Do you think that same thing would work for you?
Yeah, like the
Yeah.
storytelling perspective kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. And using it from like a third party story. So like this customer told us this was their experience. They're prepared to put it out there. Do you think that'll work for you? And often those experiences and helping people feel like actually someone else has had this problem, they fixed it, can make them feel much more comfortable about, okay, G2 or Oneflow is the right business to help me fix that problem.
Yeah. So that's like a way of avoid over engineering references like tech stack, geography, team size, and instead use like outcome led proof. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think this is one of those really tough things where if you get a particularly difficult buyer, we get different types of buyers, right? And some people are very evidence or fact based, and they might be like, "Oh, well, actually, you haven't got an example of you doing this with someone that only sells to the Benelux region." And then you go, "Okay, cool, that is a bit of a problem, but we do have it for another customer in your vertical that sells to a different region. Do you feel like the business opportunity there would be the same?" And those being able to like work around it and understand if they feel comfortable with that proof. So asking questions like, do you think that's like enough can be a really important way to help make sure they think actually they have done this for another business in a good space. So it's just when you're in a conversation stage and you're sharing social proof, ask them if it helps. Before you send the case, be like, I can send like, if I share that case, like if I share a case study, would you read it? Very different question to if it would be helpful, because 90% of the time people do not read what you send them.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. And also here in Sweden, at least, we have a lot of cases where our prospects tend to ask for references from other customers that we have. I know that it's not that common in the UK area, but here in Sweden, it comes with also using the reference for the outcome-led proof. I always tend to look for a great reference for a prospect, seeing, okay, this prospect that I have in front of me, he has this kind of experience within the CLM area, and he uses XYZ tool today, which he has experienced XYZ in. And then I tend to match their experience in the references. I've stopped looking for like they have to match the tech stack, how they use the tool, what kind of departments they have. I feel like the most efficient way and strategic way to use references is to match experiences for the references. So that's also into the outcome-led proof, I think, area for me.
Yeah, and I think when we were chatting about this before, like I absolutely loved what you're doing. I think this is one of those pieces where it's exceptional, but that would be the piece where I'd also say it's very tough to scale some of those. And for people listening, it's like getting to that level. Normally, it's you've got to know people you can get references from. You've got to have that experience. So if you're relatively new to a business, not just sales, but that can be a little bit tougher. And I think those experiences that you're talking about, if you can find people that are happy to speak to them, that's fantastic. I think when you look at it from a global scalable approach, that is really hard to do at like a company level, and that's why companies put so much effort and time into the case study piece. If you can get customers and ask when they're on board to be like, hey, would you mind chatting to another customer if I need this in the future? If you've delivered a good experience for someone, then that's a really, really helpful way for you to be able to do that. But also, how do you remember and access the information of who's done what? That's the other thing. So where do you log it and be like, oh, okay, actually, yeah, I remember Bob had this problem and he's happy to talk to Cheryl about it, for example. So it's worth just taking like little mental notes or actual notes around those things.
Yeah, 100%. And how do you decide, we were talking about this a bit before, like how do you decide which customer story will build the most confidence in buying G2, for example?
Yeah, that's a I often like to use a couple of different ones depending on the problems. So we have like three core pillars of our offering. One's the review site, one's our buyer intent, and then one's the content we sell separately. So different case studies that speak to each of them. When we think about building confidence, you got to understand that problem again. And like, what is the challenge we're helping demonstrate we solve? And then sense checking about like if they are happy with it and they're like, actually, yeah, do you know what? That does help me feel good and like we're ready to go ahead. It comes back to that med piece of decision criteria. What do they need to see to feel confident making a decision? Is it that they need evidence from customers, or is it that actually they really do want to chat to someone, or do they just want to know that someone like them's used it before? And those are the things that I think sense checking that and being like, does that help you feel confident we're going ahead here, or is it actually we need to chat to someone that exactly like you? Those are slightly different conversations, and that's then when you might have to think about actually like the case study might not be enough, or we've actually satisfied it, they're happy, we're good to roll ahead.
Yeah, great. So to wrap this up, ask right away, do you think this is enough proof for us to continue this dialogue? Use outcome-led proof and know your case studies. Do you want to add something?
Use your G2 reviews and your G2 badges. And if you're in a good spot, push them to the categories, get them to compare your competitors, understand how you rank against them. And if a customer has like ease of use is really important, and you know that your ease of use rating is better on G2, then feel confident coming back to that challenging thing. Be like, okay, well, if you're comparing us to Panda, why don't you go and actually just sense check that on an external place like G2 and see how we stack up. If you're confident enough to say that, then your buyers are going to be like, interesting.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. That's all for this episode of Sales in Minutes. Thank you everyone for listening, and a big thank you, Monty, for joining us.
You're very welcome. Thank you very much for having me on again, Astrid.